Hey everybody, how are you? Hey Donnie, hey Britt, hey Tim. Let a few people get in here, kind of see where we're at. All right. Vermont, Iowa, awesome. I'm over here in Oregon, in the Pacific Northwest. I'd like to make it up to Vermont and Pennsylvania and Maine one day for sure. What's up, Keith? How are you, buddy? No test tank today. I only have one available camera. What I am going to be doing, I'll describe in the live today, is the flies that we do tie, and I describe as I tie along. I'll get some video and post, and have Tim or Tyler post them also on the Nor-vise page. That way you guys can see them in action. But I won't be able to do that today. All right, so what I thought would be fun to tie today are these Bunnybou streamers. I don't know if you guys are familiar with a product from Hairline called Bunnybou, but it's your standard Zonker strips, just to my understanding, a slightly different animal. They don't go to a really sharp point. The actual hair fibers, they're almost like synthetic looking. The movement on these things is absolutely incredible. I have not, this pattern I've tied for a long time. I have not fished it with this Bunnybou because the fly shop that I get it from just recently, here in the last couple months, got a hold of it. But that's what we're going to be using for the tail portion and the part of the body on today's fly. It's just incredible. The movement is super soft. It's almost like it's like it's synthetic, but I think you guys like it. Will like it. The cool thing about this pattern as well, for you guys that may not fish streamers for trout, you can use this for smallies. You can use it for bass. You can tie it slightly differently for steelhead, maybe on a shank, a tube, what have you. You could tie it bigger with just magnum strips. I don't believe Bunnybou comes in magnum strips, but if you wanted it bigger for pike, bull trout, and such, you can tailor it to your own needs. So that's why I thought I'd tie it today. You know, it's one of those patterns that's universal. You could fish it half this size for trout and bass. This is about 3.5 inches. You could tie it just like this for trout and bass. Steelhead, I'd probably still keep it this size for the Pacific Northwest, and tie it slightly different, maybe on a tube for my application, or a shank with a trailer hook back to the rear portion here. And then pike, the possibilities are endless with that, size wise. So let's get her started. This here is a TP 610 from Arex in size 1. Tailor that to your guys' needs. Basically just a streamer hook, something that is strong enough for the species that you're fishing for, and has a long enough shank to accommodate these materials. If it's a really short hook, you're going to get a couple wraps of the white and a couple wraps of the red, like in this case. We're going to tie it in a couple different colors today. But just use the right hook for the job is all I can say. If you want it really long, then use a massive hook. Doesn't matter. So this here is just a standard white cone from Hairline, and like I said, a size 1 from Arex TP610. So what I like to do is about 4 wraps. This is 030 lead. It's a perfect size. I'll explain at the very end of this fly why I use 030 on this. It'll make more sense in the end, but it's the perfect diameter to finish off the fly the way I prefer to. So I do 1, 2, 3, 4. I take my pliers. It's kind of a different way of doing it, but I'll show you why I use pliers. Number one, because I can never seem to wiggle off that tag end without unraveling the whole thing. But then I push those 4 wraps firmly behind, let me tighten that down for right now, the cone, and that keeps this cone stable. It won't spin, it won't do anything unless you back off on that lead. So I notice a lot of guys, they'll put in a cone, they'll tie, they get their materials up there, they don't even push the materials up behind the cone, and this cone is flopping. Does it have a ton to do with the aerodynamics? Maybe not. To me, it's just more of the aesthetics. It's tight, it's ready to be fished, it's ready to be abused, especially if you're fishing for bass, big browns, pike, and such. You want every thread wrap to count, and you want this fly to be stable. So just a good tip. I do it on all my woolly buggers as well that I use cones with, but I'll force that back behind, and then we start our thread. So as far as thread, you guys can use pretty much anything that you would on in a bigger fly. Color doesn't really matter. Like for instance, I'm using orange. This is I believe 12-aught nano silk from Semperfli. I like it because it's so thin, but I can still wrench down on it. If you're familiar with nano silk or some other GSPs, they're phenomenal. So that's what I just choose to use, and since you won't see the thread on this fly, why not? So I'm just using up what I have in the bobbin closest to me. But how I start this off with that lead to secure it where it is if you notice when I pushed the lead wraps forward, I pull my tag end back as I'm doing that. And what that allows me to do, I'll redo it here, is gives me a tag end to cinch down that lead. Okay. I'll do one more shove forward. And then what I like to do is for about a 1/4 inch back, secure down that lead, and then that way our cone, it may spin, but it's not wobbling everywhere. And that's how I tie in my lead on these. I just take the time to pinch it off with pliers. Like I said, I'm not really graceful with doing that like some people are. Okay, put a few more thread wraps on top of that. Come to the back. This is our tie-in point. I'll typically make a small ball. This is just so that the thread wraps, being GSP or nano silk, it's quite slick, so that it won't scoot forward on me. All right. Let me prep this zonker strip here. Robert, I'm questioning if you even fish. Come on, take it easy on me, alright? Alright. So with this Bunnybou, I want the overall length of that tail to be about the length of the hook itself. About 1.5 inches or so will do. In this case, pretty much right where it is. I'll separate that fur so I get a nice tie-in point, and with my offhand I'll come over just one time to secure that, and with your fingers wet them and pull those fibers forward. You can kind of leave that open to do, I don't know, a dozen or so wraps. You don't want this to spin when we make our few wraps forward of this white, so my suggestion is really wrenching it down. And there's your tail. Come in front of it, and then I typically wrap up about a 1/4 inch, about a 1/4 inch from the cone is where our white will go to. So Just throw a half inch or two right there. Also, guys, while this live stream is going on, which will be about an hour, every 50th person that shares this live stream on their Facebook will be entered in to win a Nor-vise buff. So be sure to share this live stream for a chance to win one of those. How's it going, everybody? Nice to see you. Awesome. Thanks, James. Hey, Jim. Okay, so with this Bunnybou, to make the profile, the body that we want, we're going to use the same piece for our, and I apologize for wearing a white t-shirt. I had to pick one either way because the next pattern we're going to tie is dark color, so lesser of two evils, I guess. In one hand, you're going to be operating your vise, the rotary function. In the other, you're going to be holding the tag end of that rabbit strip. Mind you, this is about a 5-inch strip, so when I'm tying these, no matter what color, I just pre-cut them 5-inch, 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 roughly, and maybe even 4-inch is probably what this is. I eyeball them, and then that way you can just churn them out really fast. But the idea with this is wrapping away from you is make back-to-back wraps. You can even adjust the tension a little bit on your vise so that you can be a little bit more slow and precise with your wraps. One more will do it. And tie this off. So as you can see, this rabbit is incredibly fluffy. Bring back your bobbin and tie that off. So as you can see with the one I already have tied here, this is kind of old Daredevil color combo. You can't go wrong with it for a lot of species, but the redhead type look, I'd probably put a red cone if I could find one that I liked instead of white to complete the picture, but it's kind of what we're going for, is that red and white classic look. Alright, cut off that tag in. They don't, to my knowledge, in the fly shop that I got this, the question is, do they offer that material in standard and crosscut? To my knowledge, it's just in the standard. So that's why for the head, while you totally could use just a standard strip, I will use crosscut. I think it's probably something they would work on in the future, but to my knowledge, it's a fairly new material, so I'm not sure what they have planned for the future, but that gives you an idea of how puffy that profile is. If you were to do it in olive, the entire thing, it could be an awesome sculpin pattern. It just maintains that that profile without getting super waterlogged, and it just moves like crazy. So like I said, here in the next day or so, I'll get some good videos of the flies that we tied tonight in the live stream in the fish tester, and get those videos posted up so you guys can see. But the next material here is standard Flashabou in red. This is going to be our flash going down the sides. I like about 4 fibers or so going down both sides. So what I like to do is just make a slit at the top of the package. Just pull out what I need. And we'll make these roughly the length of the tail. And I start on my side here, and I lay them across, so towards you guys. That just helps kind of keep them stable for that first wrap. take the far side, sweep them back, and secure those. And trim. Alright, so there's our flash. It doesn't take much. Like I said, I like about 3 to 5 depending on what color and how. Some Flashaboos seem to be more rigid than others. This is a really flowy Flashabou, the red is, so that works for me. But there's our flash. Alright, and last but not least, we're going to need a piece of red crosscut rabbit strips. You can see here. So what I look for, if this is you guys looking at it right now, is I try to find the pieces first where the hide is away from me, like you're seeing it, and the fur goes off to the left. If you're tying like right hand in your bobbin or right-handed tire, this makes it a lot easier to wrap. You reverse wrap if the hide is the other way. So this is what I prefer, basically the way you guys, I believe, would be looking at it. The fur going off to the left and the hide away from you. So I just tie in. Sometimes I'll pull off just a little bit of fur so I have a nice tag. There we go. And make that nice and secure. And a couple half hitches behind our cone. Okay. So we're going to make about 3 wraps slowly so we can kind of keep our flash managed. I do about 2 or 3 wraps, and then these last few I hand wrap because I want them to, one after the other, I should say, be kind of forced behind that cone. So it's about 2 more, and I'll show you why. And this is a good explanation point for the 030 lead as well. So let me tie this off real quick and I'll explain why we used the 030. So when I tie this off so that you don't see the hide, so if you look at where my tie off point is, when I cut this, you're going to see this little tag on the underside. I don't know if you can see that. But you're going to see this little tag. So for aesthetics, what I do is I take my scissors, any fine point scissors, and I take that hide and I shove it behind that cone, and I go little by little and push that hide from that last wrap underneath that cone. So what this will eventually do is create a more streamlined, when this is wet, a streamlined profile, rather than having all these thread wraps and hide showing. I want it to be kind of streamlined and sexy, if you will. And to finish that off, to keep those wraps where they're at, I'll take my thread and make 3 firm wraps down. And that's how you hide that hide behind the cone. And in order to do that, you have to have a smaller diameter, or sorry, I should say the perfect diameter lead to have that little space in between the lead and the inside wall of this cone to be able to shove that hide in. And that's why I choose 030 for these 1/0s. I would use like 035 lead for like 1, 2/0, 3/0, and such, but you just tailor it for what you're using as far as the hook goes and the size of the cone. But that's how you get that nice profile. Brush this out a little bit. That's how you tie these Bunnybou streamers. And now you can see, you can't see that tag end of the hide anymore. It's all shoved up underneath that cone. So it just creates a more aesthetically pleasing streamer in my opinion. Now you could do this fly in truly any color combination that you want. Period. I mean the the options are endless. Basically any color you can find of zonker, you can tie this pattern. When I think of tying this pattern, as I stated in the beginning, for those that weren't here, you're looking, for steelhead. A 20 to a 35 millimeter shank would be awesome, and then have your trailer hook secured in the back here. It'd probably be a little bit longer, maybe by half an inch, 3/4 of an inch, but there's there it is for steelhead. Or you could tie it on a different hook. You could tie it on a tube. You can tie these really large, and you can tie them small. So I just wanted to think of something that was versatile for you guys. Like this, I would cast on a 4 to 6 weight probably just fine. It's not super heavy. While it is bulky, it's not super heavy. And this Bunnybou does not hold a ton of water. When you pick up and you false cast it, you're shedding most of that water. It's just there's something different about it. I'll try to find out a little bit more, but that's about all I could research online. Was just a different species of rabbit. And for bass, all of your purples and your greens and green and orange, think of color combos that you guys would fish normally with different flies and tailor it to this pattern. That way you have something that you can tie quickly and produce a bunch of, but have a multitude of colors. So, I mean, as you can see, it's very easy to tie. They're very durable. This red will just mix in with that white and create a really cool color profile. One of my favorites is the next color combo we're going to do, which is purple and black, which is one of my all-time favorite color combos for trout and bass and steelhead, actually. And I think you'll be able to see that color combo just a little bit better with the t-shirt that I'm wearing. So let's start with that. Here's a little bit better look at this bug here. Definitely recommend the red and white. It is such an underrated color combo for trout especially. And just great for stillwater applications for bigger trout cruising, as well as smallies and trout in rivers as well. So there's your red and white. Okay. So for our black and purple, we're going to use a black cone. Same thing, TP610 from Arex in size 1. This is a slightly heavier wire hook. Like if you're familiar with Arex, the TP605 is their standard wire. 610 a little bit heavier, and the 615 is the long version. Just incredible hooks. That's why I tie on them. Same thing, we're going to use some 030 lead. 2, 3, 4 wraps. Thanks, Levi. Appreciate it. Thanks, Todd. Just want to check the computer here, see if I can answer any questions. Nice. 58 shares. Awesome. Gracias, Fernando. What size cone? Good question. I believe they're the largest size that Hairline makes, and I can never remember if they're an extra large or the large, but it's the largest one you can find through Hairline. It's just the perfect size for 90% of my streamers. I either use those or the small for real small stuff. So I've never used medium myself. I use the small or the large, and I believe, to my knowledge, that's what they call them is large. I can find that out before the end of the deal as well. Hairline makes the cones, but I believe there's other manufacturers out there that manufacture fly tying cones in the same size ranges. Hairline, just because they supply a majority of the colors that I like, and I buy these on spawnflyfish.com, the colored ones, because most shops only carry the nickel, black nickel, I believe, silver, brass, and gold. that's kind of what you have to work with. And on spawn, they have the orange. They have let's see, they have orange, black, the pearl, which is what we just used. This is a matte black, by the way. I'm trying to think what else. I believe another couple, like a pink. So they kind of cover that steelhead basis as well. So, and I love these black ones. They're just killer, super awesome. All right, so shove that lead up behind our cone. Start our thread out right behind that lead. Secure it. Wrap back about 1/4 inch to trap that lead tag. All right. Just make sure we got that secured so your thread doesn't catch that. Materials, really just the hide would catch it, so it doesn't really matter too much. But let's just form a little ball here like we did on the last one. This just prevents slicker threads like GSP or nano silk from sliding forward too much. Just gives a good tie-in point for our Bunnybou strips. So this color combo we're going to do is purple in the rear and black up front. One of my favorite color combos for bass, smallies, and largemouth, trout as well. It's just, you can't go wrong with purple and black. You know, they see that color spectrum, the violet color spectrum, a lot better down deep. So I'll typically fish like my black and purple twisted buggers in like still water or big deep holes on a river first. So especially in lakes, you can't go wrong with black and purple. They see it better. They see that silhouette. They see that violet a little bit more intensely. So just maybe my suggestion is starting off with something like this if you're fishing deep in a river, like a deep hole that doesn't get a lot of sunlight penetrating down into the water column, or on a lake. So for this one here, I'm going to make the tail slightly longer for the application I'm going to be using it for soon. That's about 1 3/4 inches of hide. So I'll separate it. Set it right on our little thread ball. Sweat your fingers. Give yourself a little bit of room to secure that. I didn't pre-cut the sections of this purple because I'm doing it a little bit longer of a tail, so I'm going to trim that off so I don't have to work around it. Okay. Bunch of thread wraps. We just don't want this to twist on us or move. So upwards of 12 thread wraps. That's the nice thing about this GSP or the nano silk. In this case, it's nano silk. Is you can put a whole bunch of thread wraps and you do not see that bulk. And that's about where I want it. I kind of pre-time. If you see me looking, I guess you can't see me looking, but I let the tips go to the spring here on the Nor-vise. So that's kind of the length I want for these. Pull back your zonker strip, couple half hitches, and we'll get this out of the way so we can wrap our body forward. Yeah, Mike, it is one of my favorite for bass. Absolutely. There's just something about black and purple that's a confidence color for me. Period, for pretty much any species. And then yeah, Levi, that's a matte black cone. They're brass. Definitely not a tungsten or anything, but they're coated with a matte black paint. So that's one of Hairline's colors that they offer. What kind of leader setup? Depends on what I'm going for. Sometimes it's just 8 to 12 pound maxima, depending on how big the fish are, or how toothy they are. As my tippet, I don't use anything crazy for the leaders. They're just all pre-tapered 10 pound leaders usually, and then I'll just replace the tippet as needed depending on what I'm fishing for. But nothing crazy, just a standard mono. Yeah, you're correct, Robert. So this is the large. It's the 1/4 inch. It's I just there's one brand that they have an extra large, I believe, and I can't remember if it's Hairline or who. They considered the 1/4 inch an extra large. I didn't want to misspeak. All right. So like before here, hold it out in front of you. You try to kind of get these hair fibers to sweep back. It makes it a lot easier when you're wrapping your hide forward. Nothing special here, just back-to-back wraps to where our thread is tied off. I'm going to do one more. Actually, I'm going to do one full wrap more purple than black here. Alright. Create a tie-off point here for my thread to go behind that hide. Alright, perfect. Okay, so our purple is tied in. Make sure you go over that real good. It's all going to be covered by flash and the black crosscut rabbit strip, so no need to be super pretty about it. Let's see here. Daryl asked, how are you fishing it? Are you stripping it, jigging it? Pretty much all of the above. In a lake, I'd probably let this sink down. You know, there's not a ton of added extra weight. I don't want this thing to just plummet to the bottom and then have to be jigging it all the time. The idea is that you get a nice even undulation. So as this fly becomes waterlogged, it's going to almost, if you're a gear fisherman, kind of like a Senko, or a tube, I guess, would be a good explanation too. I want to be doing a variable strip with it. So it could be, a little 2-inch jerky strips or a foot long, more glide type, retrieve. It just really depends what they're keyed in on, what kind of water you're fishing. I really don't jig many of my flies at all. I want to kind of create it like a leech undulation, that kind of triggers that predatory response from them. I've never had a ton of luck with super fast drops on flies. Not that I don't catch fish doing that. I just feel like I have less control, I guess, of the depth of that fly. Judging like by looking at my line going into the water, how deep that fly is. So if that makes sense, I just like to have more control. So that slow, gradual drop that's more horizontal is my preferred method to fish these. So that's why they're not insanely weighted, because I don't want that head to just drop down super, super fast. That's where my success lies in the past and kind of how I fish it in the future. Let's see here. Let's go with some purple flash. This is Flashabou as well. Number 6977. I wish they'd name these so you could actually have a name for it, but it's got some pinks, some oranges, some reds, just a really cool hue to it. It's my favorite purple that they make besides the standard flat colored purple. Let's take about 4 of these pieces of flash and do the same thing we did on the first one here, and lay it on your side. Take the tag in and let it go over the cone on the opposite side. Kind of holds it there for that first wrap. Let it drape nicely along the side. Perfect. And pull it on the opposite side. Same placement, just right along the flank. And trim it. You don't need to be super, super exact with these. Got flash somewhere on me. With where the flash goes, it will get moved around. It's just to add that a little bit of flash going along the side of the fly, and you're good. So that's perfect. Okay. So some black cross cut. I'm going to pull off a little chunk of fur at the very tip so I can have a nice tie-in point. Get my flash out of the way a little bit if you can. Perfect. Okay. Do a couple half hitches right behind the cone. Get your bobbin out of the way. Alright, so my flash keeps wanting to come forward. That'll get pulled back when we make this first wrap, but nice and slow, kind of one over the other. We're going to do 3 wraps rotary, and then just like the last one, these last wraps I want to be a little bit more methodical. 1, 2, and I pull it and it kind of rotates a little bit. And that looks about right. So I'm going to repeat that tip about shoving it behind the cone for those that are maybe new to the live here. But tie off your zonker strip. Snip off that hide as close to that cone as you can. And then I'll show you here what I did previously. So if you can see it, I don't know how well you can see it, but you have this little bit of hide where you cut it off, right? And throughout this, intermittently, you'll see a little bit of hide as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to hide the hide, if you will. I just popped out here. One sec. This does happen, so it's a good thing that it did happen. We can kind of go through it together here. I didn't secure the hide well enough. So what happened was it came out from underneath the thread, and that's all right. We'll adapt here. Okay. So what you do is you take the points of your scissors, and the reason we use that 030 lead with these 1/4 inch cones is because it creates a cavity behind that cone that, if I hadn't screwed this up, would allow me to shove that tiny little bit of hide back behind that cone. And this worked pretty well, but not as well as if it had come undone. And then I go through little by little and kind of force that forward. And what that does is it hides the zonker hide, and then I can tighten it down with these thread wraps in place. What that does, if you weren't to do that, it would fish just fine, of course. I just feel like as it sits there and gets abused by casting, by fish's teeth, slapping the water surface, it creates this streamline profile, and that cone is more stable as well, so it has better, water dynamics. Excuse me. When you're fishing it. So there's the purple and black version, one of my favorites. Kind of slick it back just a little bit so you can see. So about half of it will be black, half of it will be purple when it's in the water. I just don't think you can go wrong with the black and purple combo for bass, trout, steelhead. I'll definitely be tying this exact one for winter steelhead, maybe with some rubber legs instead of flash even. Just a few on each side to be really killer for winter steelhead. What other I won't necessarily have Bunnybou for it, but I'm just curious with you guys what color combos you would fish for the trout and bass that you target in your area. No, this is not Predator Flash. It's all Flashabou for both of those. So here's the packaging, just standard Flashabou, not Magnum or anything. Just a standard Flashabou works really well for me. It's kind of a good go-to for patterns like this. Beach snook, yeah. I've only fished for snook twice, but I could definitely see that. Orange and chartreuse for sure, Levi. That's a great color combo. Definitely a good color combo. I might have some. I don't know if I have chartreuse, but I'll definitely do some orange and chartreuse for bass. Absolutely. White on white, you can't beat it for sure. Yeah, you could almost use just some black crystal flash. Not crystal flash. Sorry, Flashabou. Um, on the side of the flank, like you're saying, for that lateral line. That would be very cool. You could also do an all green with black for kind of a baby bass. Could do all green with some type of a pink or a red for a baby trout if you wanted to. Even though baby trout's not all olive by any means, but just something to kind of emulate that. Yellow and bright green. Another good one. Chartreuse and white. Chartreuse and white again. Olive and pink. Yes. Olive and silver. I'll have to see what colors they come. This Bunnybou comes in, because I'd love to do a whole mess of different colors of these for the box. I kind of always have the same, 4 or 5, and there's some other ones I definitely am missing. Olive and silver. I wonder how I could do maybe even just some silver flash and maybe a silver head or something would be really good. Let's tie one more of the black and purple before we go, for anybody that's just joining us. Definitely need a few more of these in the box. This is a size 1 TP610 from Arex. It's one of their predator hooks, trout predator hooks. Name of the fly, there's really no name for it. It's just a zonker fly made out of Bunnybou, which is a new product from Hairline. It really just nothing special from a lot of these zonker flies out there. I just tie it in a certain pattern. Don't really have a name for it or anything. All right. What kind of rabbit strip is on the back? That's the Bunnybou. So here's the packaging and spelling for those of you who haven't seen it. It's just a different species of rabbit, to my knowledge, is all I could research really. And the tips are different on the fur fiber, so it's much more flowy and puffy. Moves and undulates in the water differently than a standard rabbit strip. You guys will love it. Some 030 lead here. 4 wraps. Shove it up behind the cone, and then I pull that tag back, and that kind of gives me a little valley to make my first thread wraps. Yeah, I wish I was too, Robert. You guys have a fun and safe trip. I'll look forward to seeing pictures and hearing about it. Shoot me a call at some point if you can. Hope you guys have a blast. Say hi to the crew for me. All right, so put about a dozen or so thread wraps behind that. That kind of secures your cone in place. Don't hesitate to take your pliers again and shove that back behind there. That gives it that stability to stay in place. Kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone with the lead. So what I do, about a 1/4 inch back behind that cone, is just wrap the lead parallel to the shank of the hook. Form a little ball back where we tie in our tail. Kind of prevents it from moving forward too much. If you're just joining us, I was explaining how GSP and this nano silk that I'm using is slick. Some people don't like it because it's slick on when you're first tying it on to the hook shank. You do definitely get used to that, and there's a million times more pros than cons when using it, in my opinion. So I make little measures like that to keep it from moving. which I rarely have an issue with anyway. So just form a little thread ball there, and we'll tie in our tail. About 1.5 inches, 1.75 inches of hide out the back. And I just measure it up basically till the tips hit that spring on the standard jaws. Guys, Chevin shares away from another Nor-vise buff going out, so be sure to share this live stream to your Facebook page, and every 50 they'll be giving away a Nor-vise buff, so be sure to get those shares out there. I appreciate it. Alright, so wet your fingers, just kind of pull that hide forward just a little bit to give you a space there to tie this off. I try to put about a dozen or so thread wraps just to make sure that it is on there, and you don't have to worry about it spinning when you wrap your body forward. All of this will be hidden, so there's nothing to keep pretty. Alright, and then wrap your thread to about that point, 1/2 inch, and get your thread out of the way. Alright, so we'll take our Bunnybou, kind of sweep those fibers backwards. Makes it a lot easier to make your wraps nice and neat. And I adjust my tension on the rotary function of the Norvise, and just one wrap in front of the other, making sure you don't pinch down too much of the fibers. That's perfect. And then tie it off. So we're leaving about 1/4 inch here up at the front between where our purple is tied off and the cone. That's going to be for our flash and for our flash and for our front color. So tie that off. Perfect. If you have to, or you got a brush, this would be a good time to just kind of brush that back, make sure there's nothing caught up too much. I can't wait to use this purple for steelhead next year. I think it's going to be really, really good. Okay. Take about 3 or 4 pieces of Flashabou here. This isn't the all purple. This has it's kind of like a holographic Flashabou. It's got some reds, greens, orange kind of in it. It's my favorite purple they make. I pretty much use that for my purple for all steelhead and trout stuff if I'm using Flashabou. Alright, lay that on your side, the length of the tail. And then secure it to the other side. Just kind of want it right along the flank there, so take your time to adjust it where you need to. Alright. And until we get that black wrapped in up front, they kind of flop where they want to. There's no real way to escape that. That's alright. Alright, cool. So then we'll use some black cross-cut rabbit for the front. Pull off a little bit of the fur so you get a good tie-in point. Not much, doesn't take much. Let's get that tied in nice and tight. Come up behind your cone and get your thread out of the way. I usually do about 3 wraps rotary and then 2 non-rotary behind that cone, so make your first, get it started at least. First few wraps kind of one on top of the other, or I should say half on top of the other, just to build up that bulk of the black. And then I do 1, 2. This is where it's kind of just best judge. That's about right. You just want to pull it tight. It'll kind of roll on you and cinch up in underneath that cone the best it can, but that's not where we stop. We want to do a better job than last time of tying off this zonker strip so that we can shove all the visual hide underneath that cone. And how I do that is cut as close to that cone as I can. I don't know if you can see that or not, but you can see the hide cut off. I take my scissors and I shove about every 1/8 inch of that collar up underneath that cone. And that goes basically right in between that 030 lead and the inner wall of that cone, and just gives you a much nicer profile. And then, to keep it there, just gently stroke back the fur fibers and make a couple loose wraps and pull down, and that will cinch that all in place. And finish off the fly. Just a little tip, works well for me. It gives a better profile in the water. It's more durable. It hides some of that material underneath the cone, which keeps the cone stable. I think you just get a better overall profile when it's wet and swimming. There's another one of the black and purples. I really like this color combo, especially with the Bunnybou. Package of the Flash, you bet. I believe 69.77 is the purple. It's not their standard like all purple. It's got some holographic qualities to it. And then Flashabou, the red, is 69.11 for the other. So no problem. One of the questions here is from Michael. Oh, I got you. It looks like Tim or Tyler just explained that. I appreciate it. Yeah, there's different types of zonker strips. You know, you got your Magnum, you got your Standard, you got the Bunnybou now, and you got Crosscut and micro cut for smaller stuff. But they all have their place. There's nothing about zonker strips that I do not like. I think they'd really have their place with all types of fly tying, from trout streamers to bass, a lot of bass streamers for sure, steelhead, pike, muskie, you name it. I mean, there's endless colors if you find the right supplier and shop to fit those needs. It's just there's something about it when that hide especially gets saturated with water and you get that undulation that you're looking for when you tie these. There's a certain look and bulk that Marabou can emulate, and the synthetics can't as well. So I definitely recommend these Bunnybou packs as well. I'm glad I found them. Maybe somebody else knows how long they've been around. I'm new to them myself, and my local shop has maybe 5 or 6 colors. There's other colors out there, like spawnflyfish.com has quite a few that I just ordered. Josh kind of tries to have the newest stuff up, so that's a good place to go. No, the Bunnybou is not crosscut. That's just a standard, I don't know if you call it a straight cut, but it's just a basic zonker strip. Albert, there's not much I can do to explain the Bunnybou. To be honest with you, all I could find is that it's a different species of rabbit. But the tips of the fur fibers are different. They don't go to an exact point per se like a standard zonker strip does, where they goes to a really fine point. It's almost like it looks like somebody chopped it off, or it's synthetic. It's not. It's just a different type of hide, and it's very soft, very fluffy. It's just a different profile. My local shop, well, I have several. My local shop where I grew up working is Northwest Fly Fishing Outfitters in Portland, off Halsey. And then I haven't looked for Bunnybou and the other local shops like the Portland Fly Shop, River City, or the Fly Shop up on the mountain. I haven't seen what they have. Open-ended, I don't think we really have time to tie up another one, but I'd love to hear some questions about streamers, anything I can answer material-wise from you guys. There's been some awesome questions so far. I think everybody appreciates those that ask those questions. There's no dumb questions. We're all here to learn. That's the key with fly tying, period, is sharing knowledge. So if there's any questions you guys have for me, I'd love to answer them and give some insight into why I tie certain things the way I do, or what have you. Oh, sweet. 100 shares. That's awesome, guys. So 2 net gators going out. Hey, got a few more minutes. Maybe everybody can go share again, and we'll give another one away. But definitely keep coming with those questions, guys. Albert, great question. You can totally upsize and downsize this fly. You could make it massive if you wanted to, with Magnum rabbit strips and a 3/0 or whatever, and make it 6-7 inches long or bigger, or you could do it smaller. Henry, you can totally use it in salt water. Your materials aren't going to last, I don't think, as long, probably long term in salt water, but there's many hooks out there that are suitable for salt water, so you wouldn't have to worry about that. And some guys were talking about snook and tarpon and redfish and what have you. It's endless possibilities, endless color options. That's what's kind of the coolest for me, is you're not sitting there limited. You can do something to emulate an actual bait fish color profile, or you can just make a color combo like I am right now that you like. But there's no limits to it. David asks, have you tried pine squirrel for smaller streamers? I love pine squirrel. I use it a lot for smaller trout streamers myself. I haven't tried it for like this type of pattern yet, but I use a lot of pine squirrel personally, for sure. And if you guys want to see more streamers like this, Muncy Designs, Muncy Designs on Instagram. I post a lot of flies, and I love talking streamers. So if there's ever questions you guys have, if I don't know, I'll find out an answer for you. I just like talking fishing and fly tying. So feel free to go over there and follow. And I have a lot of my artwork and hopefully some fly tying galleries on my website. It's kind of in construction right now at munceydesigns.com, but I have apparel and my artwork over there, and I'll be slowly incorporating my fly tying as well, with links and such to my social media. Have you ever added some flash behind the cone to replicate a lateral line? So we were just talking about that for like snook. I have not. But I mean, I suppose you could use like an olive with a black lateral line, or white, or kind of I forget what they call that one, off white. Anyways, but it's a white or off white with a black lateral line for snook. It's incredible. So another option for this, and is it Detour? To Nor-vise. Gotcha. I'll let Tim or Tyler answer that. You definitely can, in my opinion, though, use a dubbing loop. Another product that just came out from Montana Fly Company is the Bunny brush. It's already created in a brush. I've been waiting for something like this for years, but I'll definitely be using it here in the future. probably in the next week I'll have some flies up that use this. But what a cool way to eliminate the hide and that bulk, and just have a center tie-in point and tie-off point. So be on the lookout for that. This is pretty cool stuff. I only have it in a few colors: white, olive, and I think black. But pretty cool stuff. Thanks, Michael. I appreciate it. Thanks for joining. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Yes, definitely go over to the Nor-vise YouTube page, like Tim's saying, where they make the brushes using craft fur. It's very easy, super effective. Tying brushes with the Nor-vise fly tying system is once you get a hang of it, I should say, is effortless. It's just like anything. There's that learning curve. Stick with it, and you realize how easy and effective and efficient it is. So yeah, these bunny brushes, just, oh my gosh, I was like, I saw them and immediately, a million ideas popped in my head, because I've done brushes, if you will, like in a dubbing loop with Zonker, and it works well once you get the proportions right and you're using the right thread or wire. But yeah, it's just somebody somebody had the right idea. Yes, and this video will be posted on the Nor-vise fly tying, Nor-vise YouTube channel, for those of you that are just coming in, to be able to kind of refer back to some of the tips and tricks and the patterns if you weren't able to see a full one. So definitely we'll have those up, and then also I'll get some videos of this in the fly tester so you guys can see these materials in motion, and Norvise will have them up, and we'll get them up on YouTube and Instagram and such, to kind of give you an idea of what these look like when they're wet. So all right, guys, well, I think that pretty much closes her up. I appreciate everybody for dropping by, and Norvise for having me. I really appreciate it. Get out there. Hopefully it's not too hot where you are. It's kind of been miserable and slightly cooling down where I am at, so hopefully the water temps will get down in a reasonable range and get out and do some fishing here soon. I appreciate y'all. Thanks a lot.